What would you say if someone told you that they were about to name their baby Karen? Be honest. And it's not like everyone named Karen suddenly changed for the worse, right? But the cultural meaning of the name certainly did. How does this happen? Well, social science has an answer for that, and it reveals something pretty wholesome about us. Take the name Jacqueline. It was at its peak popularity in the United States. Here, you can see that the name would decline in popularity until suddenly there's this little bump. What happened is that Jacqueline Kennedy became the first lady, and it's arguable that her visibility and appeal temporarily boosted the name's popularity, giving it a quick second life. Here we can see data on the name Diana, which was most popular in 1946, after which, again, everything that goes up must come down, and its popularity started to decline. But then it spikes around the wedding of Princess Diana to that guy. And the same thing happens with Britney. Her star power gives the name another temporary but significant boost. So what this shows is that public figures can suddenly make a name feel culturally relevant again, even when it was already on its way out. Public figures and events can also have the opposite effect by making people want to avoid certain names. The names we reject tell us just as much about culture as the names that we choose. I mentioned Karen earlier, but another great example is...
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now. Please try a little later.
So Alexa was actually rising in popularity and become the 32nd most popular girl's name in the United States by 2015. And then Amazon released the Echo. The name plummeted in popularity. Suddenly, a name that once sounded modern and appealing became associated with a voice assistant sitting in people's kitchens. So names can carry baggage. They absorb the different meanings and associations that are circulating in the culture at the time. And public figures, cultural events, and family traditions all make certain names feel appealing, meaningful, prestigious, or totally worth avoiding. The role of these types of factors in naming feels intuitive, but it's only half the story. Now let me introduce you to a sociologist named Stanley Lieberson, who wrote a book called A Matter of Taste, where he tried to understand how fashions change over time. His focus was on baby names. Why baby names? Seems random. Well, they're actually a great case study for understanding fashion trends because unlike clothing or other consumer brands, there isn't really a company spending billions of dollars trying to convince people to name their kid Monica. It becomes this really pure case for understanding and observing why some things become popular or not. What Lieberson found is that even though what seems fashionable might seem random to some or ever-changing in unpredictable ways to others, when it comes to the fashion of baby names, the changes are actually surprisingly small and orderly. And you can see these patterns most clearly when it comes to the beginning and the ending sounds of these names. Here's an example. In the early 1900s, some of the most popular girls' names were Jane, Janet, and Janice. The J sound was fashionable. But parents didn't just keep choosing the name Jane over and over again. Gradually, that name saturated the market in a way, and parents innovated on it. Over time, the vowel shifts from J to J, like a J-E sound, and eventually a new name emerges that feels both familiar but also fresh, Jennifer. And Jennifer, it becomes the most popular girl's name in America for 15 years straight. But more importantly, it reshapes sounds for girls' names. Now that Jennifer is the new fashionable standard, suddenly two sounds become fashionable at once. The J, the J-E sound at the beginning, and the E-R, ending. And you can actually watch those sounds ripple outward into other names. The J in Jennifer results in Jessica, Jenny, and Jenna becoming popular, Heather and Amber, innovated on the sound becoming popular in the years that follow. Completely different sounds, but sharing the same ending that Jennifer had helped produce as a new standard of fashion. And none of the parents making the decisions are consciously thinking about any of this. They're just thinking, oh, I like the sound of that. Oh, but what sounds good to us or things that we often just like is quietly shaped by what's already popular and also culturally familiar. And that's exactly Lieberson's point. He calls this kind of gradual, stepwise change in culture the Ratchet Effect, because fashion tends to click forward one small step at a time. Quick sidebar, since we are talking about names, Ratchet probably wasn't the greatest branding decision. When I used to teach this concept to students around like 2015, 2016, my students' eyes would just bug out their heads. Maybe Lieberson was betting on his terminology outlasting the slang. I did take a class with him when I was in graduate school, and he definitely thought about causality and trends and ways that I've not yet seen replicated, so I wouldn't put it past him. Good one, Stan. But you might be thinking, what about old-fashioned names that are coming back around again? Names like Charlotte, Maeve, Theodore, Henry, and James. What about the completely bizarre names that celebrities give their children? How do these things fit into this Ratchet Effect pattern? Well, first of all, how dare you? Okay. Well, give me a second. God. Trends don't just move forward step by step. They also move in cycles. In fact, names often come back into fashion roughly 100 years after their peak popularity. It's called the 100-year rule, which is a good name. Specifically, names associated with your parents' generation often feel old or dated, so we don't choose from those. Unless it's like a tradition thing, right? But the names of the previous generation, so this would be the baby's not the baby's grandparents, but the baby's great-grandparents, those names we consider to be classics. This is because they're close enough in time to be familiar, so we know about them, but they're also old enough or removed enough to feel charming. This observation was actually first made by Redmond and Rosencrantz in their 1988 book, Beyond Jennifer and Jason, wherein they described this as grandparent avoidance in naming practices. And as for the exotic celebrity baby names, well, that's a little different. Extremely unusual names like Apple, Northwest, and AE-A-12, sure, they might attract attention precisely because they break the pattern of what is popular. And because of that, they're likely to be seen as strange and unpleasant. But more to the point, they usually don't last or cause a new trend in baby names because they're too far outside what sounds familiar. And that's important because fashion doesn't usually change through total randomness. It changes through small acts of novelty that get built on top of what already feels recognizable. And this gets to the bigger idea behind Lieberson's book, which is that the forces that shape baby names are often the same forces that shape fashion, aesthetic, trends, and tastes in other fields, whether it be the length of skirts, the shape of our cars, and even apparently the facial hair of presidents. I am serious. That's not a joke. I'm serious. He writes about it. So, have I totally ruined baby names for you? Why would I speak about the very magic experience of new life and naming babies and a choice about facial hair in the same breath? And the answer is that even our most intimate decisions are shaped by the times and the societies in which we live. Meaning is never made alone. Every name that has ever felt perfect to a parent was perfect partly because of the thousands of invisible hands that shaped what perfect could even sound like in that moment and in the decades before. If everyone is naming their kid Adam and you deliberately choose something as un-Adam as possible, you're still working from the same reference point. So your rebellion is still being shaped by the same social forces you're trying to escape.
Resistance is futile.
Every instance of naming a child is part of a collective act of culture making that you and the people who named you probably didn't even realize you were all participating in. Every time someone chooses a name for a baby, it's a special act. It is also a social one. I hope you enjoyed this Mother's Day inspired episode. If you'd like to keep learning with me, like and subscribe because I'd love to have you here. And a special thank you to all the parents, caregivers, and general village members who are doing the difficult and important work of raising the next generation of tiny social actors. Let's keep them safe, but also let's keep them curious.